The year 2025 brought with it a profound reevaluation of global peace narratives, culminating in an announcement on July 27th in the serene halls of Oslo, Norway. The Norwegian Nobel Committee, guardians of one of humanity's most revered accolades, unveiled its shortlist for the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Among the 5 distinguished names, one ignited an unprecedented global debate, stirring awe, controversy, and profound hope. Ibrahim Traore, the 36-year-old interim president of Burkina Faso. This was more than a mere nomination. It was a potent challenge to entrenched perceptions of leadership, governance, and the very essence of peace in the 21st century. It explicitly questioned whether a leader's pathway to power, particularly through a military transition, should automatically disqualify them from recognition for tangible peace-building efforts. Traore, a soldier who ascended to power via a military coup in September 2022, stood distinctly apart from the conventional figures often considered for such an honor. He was not a politician refined by elite institutions, nor a diplomat polished by endless global summits. Instead, his image was that of a man deeply rooted in the soil, a leader whose vision of peace derived from the daily struggles of farmers, the aspirations of children, and the unyielding resilience of a nation too long consigned to the geopolitical periphery. His name, articulated in the hallowed chambers of Oslo, sent immediate ripples. From the sun-baked, dusty streets of Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, these reverberations extended to the sophisticated corridors of power in Paris, Washington, D.C., and beyond, compelling a global reckoning with what peace truly entails in an era marked by fragmentation and relentless flux. The nomination effectively forced a re-examination of peace, not merely as the absence of conflict, but as the active construction of sustainable social and economic well-being. The announcement at the minimalist yet elegant Nobel Institute was electric. Journalists leaned forward, their pens poised, as the committee's chair uttered Traore's name. Diplomats exchanged knowing glances, their hushed whispers intertwining with the palpable weight of historical significance. Here was a young African leader, barely into his 4th decade, hailing from a nation consistently ranked among the world's poorest, now a leading contender for an honor synonymous with the profound legacies of Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai, and Martin Luther King Jr. Traore's remarkable journey, from a humble village boy to an emerging global symbol, stood as a testament to the transformative power of conviction over conventional wisdom, decisive action over empty rhetoric, and resilient hope over pervasive despair. This unfolding saga tells the epic tale of Ibrahim Traore, often characterized as the farmer in uniform, a leader who endeavored to convert battlegrounds into productive farmlands, transmute despair into inherent dignity, and elevate a nation's relentless struggle into a guiding beacon for the world. Ibrahim Traore's life began in 1988, in a small, unassuming village within Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation situated within the arid, expansive Sahel region of West Africa. His formative years were irrevocably shaped by the harsh realities of profound poverty. The relentless sun scorched cracked earth, electricity was an ephemeral luxury, and the specter of hunger was a constant, unwelcome companion. Yet, it was within this crucible of relentless hardship that Traore's indomitable spirit was forged. His parents, subsistence farmers who literally wrested sustenance from unforgiving soil, instilled in him an enduring reverence for the land and a fierce, unyielding sense of duty. "The earth is our mother," his mother would often impart, her hands calloused from years of arduous toil. "Treat her with respect, and she will provide." These profound words became the bedrock of Traore's life philosophy, nurturing a boy who perceived not limitations but boundless possibilities in the very dust beneath his feet. This connection to the land and its people would later distinguish his leadership, contrasting sharply with the often abstract policies formulated in distant capitals and the detached rhetoric of international aid agencies. For Traore, the military offered a clear pathway to opportunity. In a nation where access to quality education was often a luxury reserved for the few, the army provided essential structure, rigorous discipline, and a tangible chance for social mobility. He enlisted not primarily for personal power, but with an overarching sense of purpose, propelled by an earnest desire to serve a nation he acutely perceived as progressively slipping into disarray. By his early 30s, he had cultivated a reputation as a captain of unwavering integrity, earning the deep respect of his soldiers for his fundamental fairness and the quiet admiration of his superiors for his steely resolve. However, as he steadily climbed the ranks, he bore witness to a nation incrementally unraveling. Burkina Faso was bleeding, both metaphorically and literally. Insurgent groups, some with clear links to transnational entities like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, systematically ravaged the northern and eastern regions. This brutal conflict led to the displacement of over 2 million people, leaving an indelible trail of death, destruction, and profound trauma. The civilian government, then led by President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, appeared largely impotent, conspicuously unable to stem the escalating violence or address the deeper, systemic wounds of endemic poverty, pervasive corruption, and perceived exploitation by foreign powers. The situation was compounded by external geopolitical interests, where the Sahel had increasingly become a battleground for influence, with varying international actors prioritizing counterterrorism operations over foundational governance and sustainable development. By September 2022, the prevailing situation was unequivocally untenable. A critical analysis of the nation's economic landscape revealed that multinational corporations exerted control over vast swaths of Burkina Faso's most fertile plains, systematically extracting substantial profits from rich gold and manganese deposits, while local farmers struggled with widespread hunger and landlessness. Furthermore, much of the foreign aid received was often encumbered with exploitative conditions, contributing to a cycle of debt and dependency rather than offering genuine, sustainable salvation for the Burkinabe people. For Traore and a select cadre of young, increasingly disillusioned officers, the breaking point had arrived. On September 29, 2022, they executed a bloodless coup, effectively ousting Kabore and, in a swift and decisive move, named Traore interim president at the remarkably young age of 34. The international community recoiled with predictable condemnation. Military coups were largely viewed as anathema to the principles of democracy, perceived as dark relics from a bygone era. The African Union swiftly suspended Burkina Faso's membership, and Western capitals issued stern, uniform condemnations. However, Traore remained resolute and undeterred. In his inaugural address to the nation, delivered tellingly in a simple military uniform, he spoke not of conquest or retribution, but of the imperative of creation and rebuilding. "We did not come to rule," he declared, his voice steady and resonant like the Sahel winds. "We came to rebuild." These words, raw and unadorned, heralded the dawn of a revolution unlike any seen before in the region. A revolution not primarily driven by abstract ideology or the naked pursuit of power, but profoundly rooted in labor, unity, and an unwavering commitment to truth and national dignity. Traore's vision for Burkina Faso was as audacious as it was fundamentally elemental: peace achieved through robust self-reliance. In an age often characterized by performative diplomacy and the hollowness of unfulfilled promises, he consciously chose to champion the ancient, enduring virtues of hard work, collective sacrifice, and profound community spirit. His primary battlefield was strategically redefined. It was not solely the war-torn north, but rather the pervasive hunger that afflicted every village, the ignorance that dimmed the bright minds of the young, and the pervasive despair that systematically crushed the human spirit. His chosen weapons were not firearms and munitions, but foundational institutions, schools, clinics, and life-sustaining seeds. Within a mere few months of assuming power, Traore unleashed a torrent of reforms that would fundamentally transform Burkina Faso, and in doing so, send significant shockwaves across Africa and, eventually, the broader global community. Analysts noted a clear echo of Thomas Sankara's revolutionary ethos, emphasizing self-sufficiency and rejection of neo-colonial economic structures, yet adapted for the complex security challenges of the 21st century Sahel. The deeply entrenched insurgency that had torn Burkina Faso apart was Traore's immediate and most formidable challenge. Rather than merely escalating the cycle of retributive violence, he deliberately chose a path of radical reconciliation, a strategy often dismissed by conventional security frameworks. Over 12,000 former militants, men and women who had once fought under the banners of terror, were welcomed back into society through carefully structured community dialogues, comprehensive vocational training, and thoughtfully designed resettlement programs. Traore worked tirelessly alongside local leaders, ranging from revered village elders to influential religious figures, to intentionally create safe and inclusive spaces where former fighters could symbolically lay down their weapons and, critically, pick up the tools of constructive labor. Carpenters, farmers, and skilled artisans began to emerge from the ashes of protracted conflict, their hands now engaged in the vital work of building rather than the destructive acts of war. On May 4, 2025, Traore further amplified this vision by publicly pardoning 1,100 additional former militants and formally enrolling them in the groundbreaking Farmers of Peace program. This initiative, which rapidly garnered international acclaim and was hailed by the United Nations as a global model for comprehensive post-conflict reconciliation, literally transformed former battlegrounds into fertile agricultural fields. In villages nestled along the life-giving Nadinon River, men who had once manned oppressive checkpoints now skillfully operated irrigation pumps, their utilitarian overalls proudly emblazoned with the words, "Farmers of Peace." This demonstrated a pragmatism that prioritized tangible peace dividends over punitive justice in a fragile context. The tangible impact of these initiatives was staggering and undeniable. Reported terror attacks plummeted by a remarkable 70% within a year, and communities once fractured and paralyzed by fear began the arduous, yet hopeful, process of healing. In the town of Kaya, a former militant named Musa Zongo articulated the sentiments of many when he stated, "I fought because I had nothing. Traore gave me a purpose, a field, a future, a home." This revolutionary approach was undeniably fraught with risk. Genuine reconciliation demanded an extraordinary degree of trust in a nation deeply scarred by successive betrayals, and immense courage in a region where the pursuit of vengeance was often the deeply ingrained norm. Yet, Traore's conviction remained unshakable. "These are not enemies," he asserted with profound clarity. "They are our brothers and sisters, tragically led astray by despair. Our sacred duty is to bring them back to the light." His resonant words echoed not only within the borders of Burkina Faso, but reverberated across the entire Sahel, a vast region where similar conflicts had left deep and enduring wounds. The Farmers of Peace program swiftly became a potent symbol of hope, a powerful testament to the transformative potential of second chances, and the profound possibility of forging a lasting peace through unity and shared purpose, rather than through perpetual division. This represented a fundamental shift from traditional security-first approaches, challenging the prevailing wisdom that military force alone could address the root causes of extremism without addressing social and economic grievances. Perhaps Traore's boldest and most economically disruptive move was the decisive reclamation of an astonishing 3.8 million hectares of prime agricultural land from the control of powerful foreign corporations. For many decades, multinational agribusinesses had exerted an overwhelming dominance over Burkina Faso's most fertile plains, systematically extracting immense wealth and repatriating profits, while local farmers languished in deep-seated poverty, often struggling merely to subsist on marginal lands. In a single defiant act of economic sovereignty, Traore's government nationalized these key agricultural assets and initiated their redistribution to hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers. "The land is not for sale," he declared with the same revolutionary fervor that once characterized Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revered and iconic former leader. "It belongs to those who work it, who love it, who live by it." This audacious act of economic self-determination sent palpable shockwaves through global commodity markets and international investment circles, forcing a reevaluation of land tenure systems in post-colonial states. Farmers, now empowered with ancestral land, vital seeds, and essential tools, began diligently cultivating indigenous crops such as maize, sorghum, and millet, thereby fundamentally transforming the rural economies from the ground up. In the village of Pisila, a farmer named Fatoumata Ouedraogo vividly described the profound change. "Before Traore, we were mere tenants on our own land, perpetually begging for scraps. Now we proudly grow our own food, and our children no longer go to bed hungry." Local markets, once sparsely supplied, began to overflow with abundant locally grown produce, and the pervasive issue of food insecurity once a daily and crushing reality, began its slow but steady retreat. This strategic move also struck a significant blow against Burkina Faso's long-standing dependence on foreign aid, unequivocally signaling to the world that the nation was resolutely determined to forge its own independent path, free from external diktat. The reclamation of land transcended a mere economic policy. It represented a profound cultural and spiritual rebirth. Farmers, long marginalized and dispossessed, now stood taller, their hands reclaiming not only the sacred soil, but their intrinsic dignity. In the town of Gorom Gorom, a market vendor named Aissata Diallo passionately articulated this sentiment. When Traore gave us back the land, he gave us back our pride. We are no longer beggars. We are builders of our own destiny. The ripple effects were profoundly positive. Local economies flourished, rural communities thrived with newfound vitality, and Burkina Faso began to compellingly rewrite its narrative as a nation defined by resilience and unwavering self-determination. This move directly challenged the neoliberal consensus that often prioritized foreign investment and market liberalization over national food sovereignty, positioning Traore as a radical advocate for economic decolonization. Traore's vision, however, extended far beyond the immediate borders of Burkina Faso. The broader Sahel, a vast and fragile region grappling with the dual scourges of accelerated desertification and the debilitating impacts of climate change, became the sprawling canvas for one of his most ambitious regional projects, the Sahel Life Alliance. In a landmark partnership with neighboring Mali and Niger, Traore spearheaded a regional coalition committed to planting an astonishing 800 million trees across the arid, fragile landscape. This monumental reforestation effort aimed to transform barren wastelands into vibrant, green corridors of hope. The initiative created thousands of urgently needed jobs, painstakingly restored degraded ecosystems, and crucially, fostered a powerful sense of solidarity and shared purpose among nations long divided by internal conflicts, external pressures, and acute resource scarcity. Environmentalists around the globe lauded the Sahel Life Alliance as a monumental triumph of climate justice, proposing it as a viable model for how even the world's most economically disadvantaged regions could effectively combat the existential threat of environmental collapse. Scientists expressed profound marvel at the sheer scale and ambition of the reforestation effort, which not only successfully slowed the relentless march of desertification, but also significantly mitigated the localized impacts of climate change, demonstrating tangible climate adaptation in action. In the village of Titao, women who once traversed miles in search of scarce firewood now diligently tended to countless saplings, their hands nurturing new life, where only dust and desolation had once reigned. We are not just planting trees, Traore articulated with characteristic foresight. We are planting the vital seeds of a future where our children can breathe, where our land can live again. The alliance swiftly transcended its regional scope, becoming a powerful global symbol of what collective action and indigenous innovation could achieve, offering a potent beacon of hope in a world increasingly grappling with multifaceted ecological crises. It also subtly redefined the nature of regional security, framing environmental degradation as a core security threat that required collaborative, non-military solutions. The Sahel Life Alliance simultaneously functioned as a significant diplomatic triumph, showcasing a strategic pivot from reliance on external interventions to indigenous, regional solutions. For several decades, the Sahel had regrettably served as a fragmented battleground for competing foreign interests, ranging from lingering colonial powers like France, often criticized for its continued military presence and economic influence, to rapacious modern-day corporations seeking unchecked resource extraction. Traore's expertly crafted coalition effectively transformed this geopolitical battleground into a shared, constructive mission, uniting Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in a common, existential cause. This alignment, particularly in the wake of French military withdrawals from these nations, suggested a burgeoning new regional order. The initiative garnered praise from even unexpected quarters, with some initially skeptical Western leaders reluctantly acknowledging its undeniable positive impact. A prominent UN climate official observed, "The Sahel Life Alliance serves as a powerful reminder that innovative solutions to pressing global challenges can originate from the places least expected, challenging preconceived notions of where leadership on global issues must come from. For Traore, however, the initiative was simply a pragmatic matter of sheer survival. A nation without a healthy environment, he often reiterated, is a nation without a viable future. We are quite literally fighting for our lives. This pragmatic, survival-oriented approach resonated deeply with regional populations who had long felt the immediate impacts of climate change and external exploitation, a sentiment increasingly shared across the global South. Traore understood intuitively that peace is not merely the absence of overt conflict, but fundamentally the pervasive presence of opportunity, dignity, and sustainable hope. Reflecting this philosophy, his government undertook a drastic fiscal reform, slashing bureaucratic spending by a staggering 60%, a move often met with resistance in developing nations, but critical for resource reallocation. These redirected funds were then channeled directly into the twin pillars of national development, education, and healthcare. In an astonishingly brief period of just 18 months, Burkina Faso achieved the remarkable feat of constructing 2,400 new schools and establishing 700 new healthcare centers. This unprecedented scale and speed of infrastructure development stunned regional observers and garnered significant admiration from development experts worldwide, who often highlight the challenges of rapid, equitable growth. Classrooms, once a rarity, sprang up in remote villages where children had previously studied under the meager shelter of trees, their lessons frequently interrupted by torrential rains or scorching heat. Clinics, equipped and staffed, brought life-saving care to communities long neglected, their shelves now stocked with essential medicines and their doors wide open to all citizens, regardless of their economic status. Traore's unwavering commitment to comprehensive nutrition was a cornerstone of his broader education reforms. Recognizing the undeniable link between sustenance and learning outcomes, he ensured that an impressive 95% of rural primary school children received free, nutritious lunches. Crucially, these meals were prepared from locally grown food, creating a virtuous cycle, boosting school attendance and academic performance while simultaneously providing a consistent market and vital support for local farmers. In the village of Banfora, a teacher named Aminata Konate described the profound transformation. My students used to come to school with empty stomachs, their eyes dull with hunger. Now they eat, they laugh, they dream. Traore has given them a reason to hope, a real future to aspire to. This program underscored Traore's integrated development strategy, where agricultural policy directly supported social welfare and educational objectives. Healthcare, too, witnessed unprecedented progress. Maternal mortality rates, long a tragic indicator of underdevelopment, plummeted significantly, and preventable diseases like malaria became demonstrably less deadly as clinics effectively reached previously inaccessible remote areas. In the village of Nuna, a mother named Fatoumata Diallo spoke of the transformative change. I used to pray my children would survive the night. Now I take them to a clinic just down the road, and I know they will live. The speed and sheer scale of these reforms were staggering, a powerful testament to Traore's exceptional ability to translate a compelling vision into concrete, impactful action. We are not building for awards, he stated with characteristic humility. We are building for our people, for their inherent dignity, for their undeniable future. The Farmers of Peace program, officially launched in May 2025, was perhaps Traore's most visionary and ethically challenging initiative. By publicly pardoning 100 former militants and daring to integrate them into agricultural communities, he fundamentally inverted the traditional narrative, transforming the very agents of conflict into active architects of renewal. The program provided comprehensive training, essential agricultural tools, and vital land to these former fighters, enabling them to transition into productive, contributing citizens. In villages across Burkina Faso, men and women who had once carried rifles now carried hoes, their physical labor irrigating fields, and more importantly, rebuilding trust within deeply scarred communities. The United Nations lauded the program as a truly global model, with a senior official stating, Traore has shown the world that peace is not won with weapons, but meticulously cultivated through opportunity and reintegration. The program's profound impact resonated far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. In neighboring Mali and Niger, similar initiatives, directly inspired by Traore's audacious success, began to take root, indicating a regional shift towards community-led peace-building. In the town of Djibo, a former militant named Issouf Compaoré powerfully described his personal transformation. "I fought because I had no hope. Traoré gave me a field, a purpose, a family. Now I fight for peace, the peace of the harvest." The program was not merely about rehabilitation. It was a profound redefinition of what it means to be a citizen, to belong to a community, and to actively contribute to a nation's future. Each seedling diligently planted in the Farmers of Peace fields carried a simple yet profound tag with the words liberté, travail, dignité, liberty, work, dignity, a powerful slogan that encapsulated Traoré's entire vision. On July 1st, 2025, during the Feast of All Saints, an unexpected and powerful voice joined the growing chorus of praise for Traoré. Pope Leo XIV, a pontiff renowned globally for his unwavering commitment to social justice, he spoke from the Sacred Heart of the Vatican with words that carried the profound weight of centuries of moral authority. "When I pray for peace," he declared, "I see the face of a young soldier from Burkina Faso. He does not preach through intricate laws or ancient scriptures, but through the honest toil of his hands and the boundless compassion of his heart. He has never walked the grand churches of Rome, yet he treats the world's poor as his sacred sanctuary." The Vatican's formal nomination of Traoré for the Nobel Peace Prize was a truly historic moment, unprecedented in its audacity. Never before had the Holy See formally endorsed a sitting African leader, let alone one who had risen to power through a military coup. The endorsement strategically framed Traoré's leadership as a moral and spiritual crusade, a direct challenge to the world's often obsessive preoccupation with conventional power and superficial prestige. It fundamentally shifted the global discourse from the abstract rhetoric of diplomacy to the tangible, lived reality of peace, built through concrete, humanitarian action. In Rome, the Pope's words were met with a mix of reverence and intense debate, with some Vatican scholars calling it a redefinition of redemption for a leader born of conflict, forcing a theological consideration of practical outcomes over traditional legitimacy. The papal endorsement sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, complicating existing foreign policy frameworks. In Paris, President Anne-Lucie Moreau, navigating France's complex and often contentious colonial legacy in the Sahel, offered measured praise. "We may not agree with Mr. Traoré's methods," she stated cautiously, "but his results demand our respect. He is writing a new chapter in Africa's story, one of decisive action rather than empty promises." This comment reflected a delicate balancing act for France, grappling with both its historical influence and its diminishing leverage in the region. In Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Janet R. Collins was more cautious, acknowledging that Traoré's work prompts us to rethink what peace truly means in the 21st century. Her diplomatic language subtly masking a deeper discomfort with Traoré's anti-Western economic policies and the implications for democratic transitions. Brazil's President Luiz G. Costa was unreserved in his commendation, openly calling Traoré the new Sankara, a farmer in uniform who plants hope where others sow division. In Moscow, the Russian president, eyeing increasing influence in the Sahel, praised Traoré's pragmatism, stating, "He builds not ideologies, but systems, food, schools, belief," highlighting a congruence with Moscow's narrative of supporting practical, results-oriented leadership over Western-style democratic rhetoric. The Vatican's endorsement was more than symbolic. It was a clear, unambiguous call to the world to recognize and validate a new kind of leadership. Traoré, a soldier who had never set foot in the grand cathedrals of Europe, was being hailed as a profound moral force, a man whose transformative actions spoke far louder than any sermon. The endorsement elevated him from a regional actor to a global symbol, forcing the world to confront its deep-seated assumptions about power, redemption, and the intrinsic meaning of peace in a century increasingly defined by interlocking crises. In Burkina Faso, the news of Traoré's Nobel nomination unleashed a tidal wave of pride and exuberant celebration. In Ouagadougou, the capital, tens of thousands gathered under the soft glow of homemade lanterns, their voices rising in a unified chorus of "Ibrahim, Ibrahim." Street vendors sold cups of bissap, hibiscus drink, and roasted peanuts, while drummers pounded rhythms older than the colonial statues that dotted the city. A hand-painted banner, stretched defiantly between two acacia trees, declared, "We no longer beg, the world now listens." Radio stations crackled with callers shouting, "Sacre Victoriae!" a cry of triumph that echoed through the night. Mothers wept openly, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing their children now attended schools Traore had built, safe from the incessant gunfire that once haunted their dreams. The celebration was not confined to Burkina Faso. Across the Sahel, in Niamey, Niger, and Bamako, Mali, youth collectives projected videos of Traore onto public walls, chanting, "One Sahel, one dream," embodying a growing regional solidarity. In Lagos, Nigeria, a student activist famously tweeted, "Traore didn't chase awards in Davos. He chased harvests in the fields. That's why this Nobel matters." In Johannesburg, South Africa, university students organized an art exhibit titled Fields of Peace, showcasing paintings, installations, and poetry inspired by Traore's agricultural revolution. Pan-African media called the nomination a reckoning, a bold rejection of the old global order and a powerful redefinition of Africa's rightful place in the world. In villages along the Nadanon River, former militants, now clad in overalls labeled Farmers of Peace, worked side by side with locals, irrigating maize fields and rebuilding essential trust, a tangible sign of grassroots reconciliation. In the town of Dori, a mother named Isata Sawadogo spoke for many when she said, "My son used to fear the night. Now he sleeps soundly knowing there are schools to go to and fields to tend." The nomination was more than a mere accolade. It was a profound validation of a people's resilience, a recognition that a nation once dismissed as a geopolitical footnote could lead the world in redefining the practical dimensions of peace. This celebration spread rapidly beyond the Sahel, igniting a powerful Pan-African movement. In Accra, Ghana, students held vigils, their candles flickering in the night as they earnestly discussed Traore's model of self-reliance and its applicability across the continent. In Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, youth collectives organized forums debating how his reforms could inspire their own nations, often plagued by similar issues of resource extraction and governance. On social media, the hashtag Nobel for Africa trended globally, with young Africans demanding recognition for leaders who work the land, rather than merely frequenting the international lecture circuit. In Nairobi, Kenya, a prominent journalist wrote, "Traore has shown us that peace is not a gift from the West. It is a harvest we grow ourselves," reflecting a burgeoning confidence in indigenous solutions. On July 28, 2025, just one day after the Nobel announcement, the leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger stood together in Ouagadougou for a historic press conference. Their joint declaration was a potent manifesto of defiance and hope, strategically framing Traore's nomination as not merely the glory of one man, but the collective triumph of an entire continent. They announced the creation of the Joint Civil Command of the Sahel, a new institution specifically designed to coordinate regional efforts in food security, comprehensive post-conflict resettlement, and expanded rural healthcare. The declaration was a bold statement of intent. Africa would no longer be defined by the narratives imposed by others, but by the tangible actions and self-determination of its own people. Neighboring nations like Guinea, Chad, and Togo sent official congratulations, signaling that Traore's model of self-reliance and regional solidarity could indeed become a blueprint for broader African development, a counter-narrative to often externally imposed development models. Within the African Union, the nomination sparked a fierce and urgent debate. Delegates openly questioned the organization's long-standing policy of isolating governments born of military coups, with one commissioner stating anonymously, "We cannot judge leaders solely by how they rise to power. We must judge them by the roads, schools, and clinics they build, by the tangible improvements in their people's lives." The debate reached a crescendo when several AU member states formally called for a revision of the rapid response mechanism, arguing that Traore's demonstrated results demanded a new, more pragmatic approach to governance and legitimacy. Even in Europe and the United States, diplomats began to grudgingly acknowledge Traore's growing legitimacy on the ground. While concerns over democratic norms and transitions persisted, several envoys expressed a newfound respect for Burkina Faso's sovereign path and its demonstrable progress. Quietly, some international lenders, including figures associated with the World Bank, reopened communication channels with Ouagadougou, a stark reversal from months earlier when Traore had controversially severed ties with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. This move was a tacit admission that his model, rejecting foreign debt, nationalizing key resources, and prioritizing local solutions, was not just viable, but demonstrably transformative, defying conventional economic wisdom. Traore's nomination was more than a personal honor. It was a mirror held up to the world's deep-seated contradictions. For far too long, Africa had been treated as a geopolitical chessboard for foreign interests, its vast resources plundered and its people patronized through conditional aid. Traore radically transformed that chessboard into a canvas for self-determination. His audacious rejection of IMF loans, his assertive nationalization of food policy, and his decisive ban on foreign mining firms posed a quiet but profound challenge to the entrenched global economic order. Yet, his results were undeniable and empirically verifiable. Terror attacks significantly down, farm yields substantially up, clinics open and functional, children fed and educated. In villages across Burkina Faso, neighbors once divided by ethnicity or conflict now planted saplings together, each seedling tagged with the profound words, liberté, travail, dignité. The nomination forced the world to grapple with profound and uncomfortable questions. What truly is peace in an era of accelerating climate crisis, rampant economic inequality, and escalating geopolitical strife? Is it merely the absence of war, or is it fundamentally the pervasive presence of justice, opportunity, and robust self-reliance? Traore, a farmer in uniform, showed that true power lies not in vast armies or accumulated wealth, but in the diligent hands of those who till the soil, who tirelessly teach the young, and who compassionately heal the sick. His story was a compelling call to redefine leadership, not as a product of elite credentials or fleeting global approval, but as an unwavering commitment to the common good and tangible human flourishing. The global response was a complex mix of admiration and deep unease. In France, Burkina Faso's former colonial ruler, President Anne-Lucie Marot's cautious praise reflected a nation grappling with its own historical legacy. Traore's methods may unsettle us, she said, but his achievements compel us to listen and to learn. In the United States, Secretary of State Janet R. Collins spoke of an opportunity to rethink peace, her words masking a deeper discomfort with Traore's outright rejection of Western economic models and liberal democratic norms. Brazil's president, Luiz G. Costa, was more direct, recounting a correction from Traore himself. I compared him to Sankara, and he gently corrected me. He said, "I'm no hero, I'm just a man who works the land." That's when I knew he deserved the Nobel. In Moscow, the Russian president praised Traore's pragmatism, noting, he builds not ideologies, but systems, food, education, hope, positioning Russia as a pragmatic partner. The reactions were not mere commentary, they reflected a shifting geopolitical reality. For decades, Africa had been a battleground for foreign interests. Traore turned that battleground into farmland, classrooms, and clinics, forcing even his critics to take notice of a new agency. His nomination was a symbolic turning point, a declaration that Africa was no longer speaking with borrowed voices, but with the strength of its own actions and self-determined future. As December 10, 2025 approaches, the world waits with bated breath to see if Ibrahim Traore will become the first sitting African head of state to win the Nobel Peace Prize under such extraordinary circumstances. If awarded, he would also be the first leader honored despite rising through a military transition, a global symbol of what some are now calling practical peace. Peace not negotiated in opulent hotel ballrooms, but meticulously sown in fertile fields, robustly built in new schools, and tenderly nurtured in resilient communities. But the outcome in Oslo is almost secondary to the profound transformation Traore has already sparked. In Ouagadougou, as night falls, the city refuses to sleep. The chants of Ibrahim Traore echo through the streets, carried by the rhythmic pulse of drums and the vibrant spirit of a nation reborn. Vendors sell bissap and roasted peanuts, their smiles as bright as the lanterns overhead. A banner stretched between acacia trees reads, "We no longer beg, now the world comes to us." Across the Sahel, youth collectives project Traore's speeches onto public walls, their voices united in a single dream of dignity and self-determination. In Lagos, Accra, and Kinshasa, students hold forums and vigils, their hashtags trending globally as they demand recognition for a leader who works the land rather than merely traversing the international lecture circuit. Whatever happens in Oslo, one truth is undeniably certain. Ibrahim Traore has already won. He has won the hearts of his people, earned the respect of his continent, and seized the attention of a world that can no longer ignore the profound power of peace, rooted in justice, dignity, and the sacred connection to the land. His story is not just a candidacy for a prestigious prize. It is a mirror reflecting the fundamental contradictions of our time, a potent reminder that true peace is not merely the absence of war, but the vibrant living presence of hope, meticulously sown one seed at a time.